Good afternoon, folks. This is Scott. It's Monday afternoon. I've just got done reading and responding to all of your individual posts on the discussion forum for session 1 of our course. And I'd like to give you a little bit of feedback. It's not really formal, but I've got a few points that I'd like to make about what I read, how it relates to the reading that you did, and some of my own personal thoughts. So I want to give a couple of general comments about the process of the course, and I'll do that at the end. And I've got four main points in response to your discussion posts and interactions. And for the most part, I really appreciated the interactions. None of them were really long, but most of you made some really good points, asked some good questions, and had some thoughtful responses to colleagues. So thank you. I appreciate that. So the four broad areas I want to address today in response to your discussion posts are three broad areas of evaluation in school, just as a reminder, review. Formative versus summative evaluation. The purposes of evaluation, research, and improvement science. And evaluation as politics. Now, this isn't any kind of a hierarchy. I'm not saying that if you didn't address something in these points, you didn't do a good job. You can read your individual feedback from me and see what my thoughts were about what you did. But these are points that are of interest to me. If we were in a face-to-face, real-time discussion, these are things that we might pull out of the conversation as some of the kind of broad themes that emerge from your reading of the chapter and making sense of the content. So, as I was reading through some of your posts, I noticed that some of you were closely aligning personnel evaluation with program evaluation. And in fact, you might have even kind of confused those two different types of evaluation work, or at least didn't pull apart program from personnel. And think about it this way. There are three key types of evaluation work that occur in schools. There's a student assessment and evaluation, which primarily looks at student outcomes. There's a personnel evaluation, which is mostly a formal process that many of you carry out as one of your formal duties. Here at the university, our formal personnel evaluation for faculty is a peer review. Administrative review only occurs in post-tenure situations, and only usually for the purpose of making judgments, not necessarily for kind of guidance and improvement, although in an informal way, administrators are always, hopefully, at the university, giving some good counsel to faculty about how they can improve their practice. But program evaluation is unique in the sense that while the evaluator may look at student outcomes, may look at personnel, the focus of the evaluation is not on either, but on a particular program. Might be an initiative that's come from outside of the school or the district that's been imposed on or adopted by. It may be unique to the school or unique to the district program. It could be anything from a preschool, before school program. It could have, the program could be a canned or a professionally developed, commercially developed program that comes from elsewhere. It could deal with a particular population, a particular strategy. But what makes a program is there's some coherence and some purpose, and of course evaluations applied to that to either help inform in making improvements or to make a judgment about the program. As far as the kind of the two basic camps of program evaluation, there's formative and summative. And these terms have been used quite a bit in student assessment over the years. Formative meaning helping students improve. It's a learning process. A summative meaning let's find out what the student knows and maybe compare that to previous work to show learning gains or compare to a particular population or to a particular criterion in order to judge the goodness, the level to which the student has achieved a particular learning goal. And surely, likewise, in program evaluation work, there's formative and summative evaluation. Formative evaluation is for the purpose of improvement, summative for the purpose of making a judgment about the program. At times, stakeholders want both purposes accomplished at the same time, and this can be difficult, both from the kinds of questions asked, the ability to collect data. When you think about it, sometimes personnel get a little nervous about sharing information when judgments are being made, as opposed to sharing information when the purpose is to get better at what we're doing. And also, the outcomes expected from formative versus summative evaluation are different. In a formative evaluation, what's expected is that we're going to learn how to do what we're doing better. In a summative evaluation, often what's expected is, do we continue to fund a program? Do we reallocate funds? Do we try something new because this isn't working? Or is this going well enough that we would like to replicate it otherwise? Learning about a program and making decisions about a program may or may not be the same thing. Session 2, when you get fully into the different approaches of evaluation, will help you kind of learn the distinctions about this in a better way. In fact, I want to share a figure from my introductory comments in Chapter 2 that has to do with Stufflebeam's SIP model. I'm going to see if I can find that. So this is in the Session 2 introductory file, and Stufflebeam was one of kind of the early heavyweights in managerial or decision-making evaluation. And his whole thing was, how do we help stakeholders make good decisions about programs? And this matrix, I won't go into great detail on it, is essentially looking at the ends of a program and the means of a program, and what the intended ends and means are and what the actual ends and means are. And you can see in red in this matrix, there are 4 key questions. We'll start in the upper left-hand box, the context of the program, which is, what is the intended end of the program? The question is, what is out there? The actual end or the product of the program is, did we do it? Did we do what we intended to do? The means, the intended means, the inputs into the program are, what are we going to do about getting what we want to get? And then in the lower right-hand box, the process question, are we doing it? So looking at the process itself and deciding if we're actually doing what we set out to do. So that is not, again, to highlight Stufflebeam and say that he is the do-all, end-all of evaluation work, but I just thought that might be a way for you to think about kind of 4 basic questions that might be asked about a program and evaluation work. Excuse me. Moving on to the purpose of evaluation, purpose of research, and purpose of improvement science. I think you all did really well in kind of distinguishing the differences between research and evaluation. And as you saw, mostly it boils down to, what is the purpose of doing the study? The purpose of research is usually one of 2 things: to add knowledge to a field or to help build theory. So a researcher is trying to reach conclusions based on her findings that she got from a study that usually is controlling as many variables as possible to try to clearly identify what is related to what and what type of input might give what type of outcome. Evaluation, on the other hand, is not necessarily looking to add new knowledge to the field. Certainly usually not involved with adding theory, but more about being able to learn something about a program, which usually leads to a judgment about the value and worth of the program. Evaluation is or should be always about giving good information to stakeholders. So it's not done in isolation. It should be work that involves stakeholders from prior to the development of research questions all the way through to disseminating the results of the evaluation. It's generally not up to the evaluator to make decisions, but to supply information to other people who are responsible for making decisions about the program. Hence, at least in federally funded and larger programs, external evaluators are usually used. And again, they are not responsible for making a decision, but providing information to a board, senior leadership team, program operators, sometimes program participants, or some other audience about leaving it to them then to decide what type of decision will be made. External biases are important because theoretically they have less bias about the program. They bring more technical expertise to the development of the evaluation and being able to carry out data collection and analysis, familiarity with tools and with analytical procedures. On the other hand, an external evaluator may not really understand the context of the program or the people involved with the program, and this can be a detriment to using an external evaluator. Improvement science is a relatively new field in education that, in my mind, goes beyond evaluation, whereas evaluation ends up with a judgment being made. Improvement science is about getting to improved results for students or with students. And so improvement science, one of the important tenets of this branch of study is you have to be able to clearly understand the system that's bringing the results that are in question. So in that regard, it's very similar to an evaluation when you're actually getting in and examining a system, a program, understanding how pieces are hooked together, what kinds of inputs are there, how inputs are related to outcomes. But again, as I said previously, an evaluation may just end with making a judgment about here's where we're at. Improvement science then goes beyond that to say, what changes are we now going to make? It's an iterative process of looking, changing, adapting, studying again, changing again. So key differences between research and evaluation and even improvement science is the role of the stakeholders. In research, stakeholders may not be important at all. In fact, in some research, it's done in isolation, and stakeholders are not really engaged, and there's a theory that's brought to bear. But in evaluation and improvement science, stakeholders are really important, both the participants in a program and the managers and, let's say in an educational program, the teachers. Who determines the questions? Vastly different between research and evaluation. In research, the researcher is the one with the question. In evaluation, hopefully the stakeholders themselves are bringing the questions that need to be addressed. Oftentimes in research and evaluation, the data collection and analysis are using the same tools and the same techniques, but again, for different purpose. And finally, I guess one additional difference between research and evaluation is communication of findings. It's very, very important in evaluation work to have ongoing communication, and you might even say somewhat informal communication back and forth between the evaluator, program managers, and other stakeholders. has to be utilized, the findings, and so communication is important. It needs to be clear and concise, and it needs to focus on what the actual information need of the stakeholders are. Whereas in research, typically research is communicated to other researchers. Adding theory or new knowledge about a field to people who are working, you might say, on the frontiers of knowledge in a particular field. The last category for me to kind of do a review of in session 1 discussion is evaluation as politics. And I'd like you to think about a thumbnail definition of politics as: politics is the competition for ends and the means to achieve them. So if you think about politics as a competition for ends, aims, goals, and the means to achieve those aims and goals, politics takes place on a micro level in a building, in a school building, in a school district, in a state, all the time. Competition for ends could be what kinds of outcomes are most important for our school community. Maybe the state defines that in elementary education. Maybe a university defines that by a board of trustees or by an academic leadership team. Maybe an after-school program, the aims are decided by the parents and the teachers who are involved with delivering that enrichment program for kids. The means to achieve them, well, those are resources: time, attention, finances, particular tools, curricula, so forth and so on. And if you think about politics as a competition for all of that, evaluation is a political act, because what evaluation is doing is making a judgment both about the aims and the means to achieve those aims. Think about it. What's a more important aim in your school and in your organization? What other aims are right there in the priority spot 2 and 3 that people may be jockeying for and say, we need to raise the level of that end up, and therefore we need to allocate more resources to that end as opposed to the one that we're currently investing in? Evaluation is used then to make judgment about those ends, saying we're not getting what we're paying for here, so we need to change the way that we get there or desire to get there. And that may mean developing a new program or allocating more resource and moving it from something to something else. It may mean the disappearance of an elective hour for kids in non-essential, quote, subjects, in order to put more time on things that the state or some other external stakeholder deems to be of vital importance. Bias, perspective, and context all matter in evaluation. Being able to identify bias, both of the evaluator, him or herself, and also the other people involved, is really important. We can't pretend that we don't have bias. It's important for us to actually identify what our biases are and get them out on the table. And if we're really interested as an evaluator in doing good work, we need to look for ways of kind of countering our bias, or balancing the biases of various people who have opinions about the program that we're looking at. And let's be honest, personal opinion can certainly override facts. We don't even have to look to the national political scene to know this is true. We can look in our own organizations to realize that sometimes people want to ignore facts, ignore good, sound evaluation work, because their particular opinion is really, really important. They're passionate about it, and they want to believe something is good or is true or is valuable, even when it may not be as valuable as their bias convinces them that it is. When judgments are made, resources can be reduced or increased. People can lose their jobs. Their time can be reallocated to other tasks that they either desire not to do or that they're excited about doing. Key activities of a group may cease to exist as the result of an evaluation study. A new training may need to occur as a result of some findings in a school or a district where people realize we're not doing what we ought to be doing, so we need to invest more of our time in learning how to do something else. And finally, evaluation work can be done to politically address inequities in our systems or to perpetuate inequities. Think about it. The power of evaluation, the political power, can be frightening in a sense if it's not handled with integrity, and you'll get in and look at more as we move into the approaches about what the kind of standards of professional evaluation are and why it's important to have integrity and to have feasible studies and to do it with good technical accuracy and to really pay attention to what our stakeholders are telling us. So quickly, 2 points that I wanted to make about the process of the course itself. The first one is when you get feedback from me in the individual response, if you have concerns or questions or think I've missed something, please send me an email. Let me know. I'll be happy to look at that with you. I certainly want to give you credit for everything you've done. And the other point is about discussion. Occasionally I do mandate responses to other people. I hope you kind of get in the habit of doing that anyway. I think you'll learn a lot by seeing what your colleagues have done, either to compare with or contrast with what you've written and thought about. You're going to kind of increase the reach of what you can do in this topic if you're looking at what other people are thinking about. So I want you to monitor your own discussion threads. What I mean by that is after you've made an original post, go back in, once or twice a week and see who's written to you. If someone's written you a response, read it and respond to them. Let them know that you're actually paying attention to either the question they've asked or maybe a statement they've made, or maybe they brought a mild critique or they're giving you encouragement. I think this is a way we can simulate conversation in a classroom environment by monitoring our threads and responding to other people's responses to us. And I think that's it. I hope this is helpful to you, and it's good for me to have an opportunity to chat a bit. I'm going to post this in the course, and I hope you get a chance to kind of reflect on what I've said today and maybe send me an email or post something in the announcements and let me know what you think. All right, take care. That's all for me.